Dune Spice Wars has itself some pretty neat atomics, the nukes in Dune, and this is what they look like in action. I recently tested them out on a live stream and I played with them right, I played with them wrong, and I'm here to suggest that actually they're a lot stronger than what you might think. Nukes in Dune Spice Wars are actually awesome. Let me share with you exactly why. I'll take you through a journey in this video and there'll be time cards below. Firstly, the atomics, or nukes, in this game are an operation. They're a mission fueled by Intel 500 and Solari 1000, plus a really high level of standing. You can see that the requirements here, I've met them, are 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 agents split across Arrakis Infiltration, the Spacing Guild Chome, and Landsraad Council. You'll need to infiltrate at this level before you can start to unlock and use the atomics function in Dune Spice Wars, so the nukes are naturally difficult to get. I would recommend, if you want to unlock them as fast as you can, you do the following. Firstly, turn to the developments tree. There are loads of great things here, right? The military tree to build up your command points to have a stronger army, particularly useful as harkonnen. The economic developments down the right-hand side of the tree are great for spice production and plastic. Up the top right, you can get extra knowledge and water and authority, but it's actually the top left-hand side of the tree that you'll need to turn to. Crucially, spying logistics, and also stealth gear and countermeasures. Here, you can get bonuses to unlock agents faster. You will reduce the amount of time it takes to unlock your agents. Get this online as fast as you can, and you can have your agents unlocking at 2 or 3 times as fast as everyone else's. So there is an urgency here to try and grab those technological developments as soon as you can. You can choose to support it by some buildings. Of note, really, the only statecraft building that I've already built is the one that you should be eyeing for extra agent recruitment speed, faster recruitment speed, I should say. And also, if you get 3 districts, you can unlock this political forum bonus. 3 statecraft buildings in 1 stack will give you 1 extra standing with the council. I only note that because the Landsraad Council are going to feature in this video something awful. The other thing that will somewhat limit your production, of course, to building these nukes, these atomics, will be your intel generation. It will also be useful for queuing up other things, like, say, crowd manipulations or ceasefires, earlier things. The benefit here really is to assign some agents on the left. Here you can see I've got 2 infiltrating Atreides. Those agents produce +5 intel, whereas the others will only produce +1. You can also build buildings on your villages to produce +2 intel each. So if you've got your agents unlocked, but you maybe don't quite have the intel levels you need, those are some other ways how you can surge up your intelligence. As you start to move towards atomics, and particularly as you start to use them, you'll likely run into a few resources that will really decline. In particular, your standing with the council and your Solari, your money. Standing with the council declining has negative impacts on a few things, but importantly, you'll start to lose most of your influence generation. You'll of course lose your votes. Those 2 combined mean you'll really have no standing at the council, so watch out for Atreides, because they'll probably be the only powerhouse on the table. The other thing that you'll be declining in is Solari. Here you can see my preferred approach to getting around that. It's essentially a 2-pronged strategy. Firstly, you oppress your key villages. Watch out though, because like I'm dealing with here, there will be raids and rebellions to deal with, so you'll need to have units nearby, so do that with caution. And the other way, of course, is to trade. You can leverage cash off the very people who you're seeking to nuke and destroy. And towards the later game, they'll probably be more likely to give you money. They tend to stack it and not really spend it as well as maybe you or I might look to spend our own Solari income generation. But that aside, it's important to note a couple of other quick tips here. As you build up towards 2000 hegemony, you'll be able to get those base buildings unlocked. So make sure that you get your hegemony fast. You might need to explore around the map, maybe grab the polar region like I have here, the 1000 bonus hegemony, or you could look to do your special thing. For me, it's using operations. Which is why also having these infiltration cells operation in the background is a great idea. These are the assassination missions. I covered a video on them recently. In fact, my most recent upload, aside from Dune Spice Wars live streams, has been around that. Another quick tip can be to free up any captured agents. The AI will usually trade them to you at a fairly low cost, particularly if you're giving them a resource that they're quite interested in. Here you can see I'm freeing up extra agents so that I can get my infiltration levels back up to where they need to be after being caught perhaps operating in enemy territory, doing some of those riskier things like crowd manipulations. Now, it's time to nuke. We know how to get them. We know what we're doing. Here is my first nuke going off in Dune Spice Wars. I did this live on stream. The strategy was pretty simple. The smuggler's base is near me, so I can take it militarily. I'll use my assassination to take out those who are far away and strike those who are close by using atomics. I'll also, as you can see, use defensive sabotage to weaken the damage coming out by 50% and increase my damage going into their base by 50%, a win-win. I'll also use some other operations around the edges to maybe weaken them, increase my supply, and you'll also see that I've got my combat drugs ready. Another sneaky trick for House Harkonnen, which basically means that when my units are reduced down to 1 health, they'll keep fighting until those drugs wear off. They'll stay alive on 1 HP. Now, when it comes to the nuke itself, you will have noticed it did no damage to the base. And this is really one of the key learnings that I want you to take away from this video. If you're approaching Dune Spice Wars having played other strategy games, Civilization 6, Humankind, Civ 5, these games have very powerful, very late game nukes. They are complete forces of obliteration. Population gone, potentially even cities themselves just completely wiped out, as well as any units. And of course, it leaves a long-standing impact on the land as well. You can't easily send workers back, or they die to being exposed to the radiation, for example. In Dune Spice Wars, that's not the case. You will have seen it didn't damage their capital at all. So a preemptive strike on a capital to damage it is useless. A quick note, by the way, if you're not familiar, these capital buildings in Dune Spice Wars don't heal, so once you damage them, you can come back and damage them again, so don't be afraid to strike them across multiple fights. And also, that maybe argues that, a nuke would be a good idea because the damage will stay. No, in fact, it does no damage. So what does it actually do then? Well, the answer in short is nothing to a capital, almost everything to units, and everything to village improvements. A few caveats here. So, as you will have seen already, it did no damage to the capital itself. However, striking a village will damage the infrastructures, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. The other thing that the atomics operation does, that Dune Spice Wars' nuclear weapons do, is wipe out enemy units. Not always, but I believe it to be almost always. In most cases, if you're striking a region that has dudes standing nearby, the nuke should wipe them out. So therefore, deploying these in Dune Spice Wars works a little differently. The way that I chose to approach it, and you might do it differently, was basically involving this ludicrous mercenary spam. A quick tip. Mercenaries, by the way, have no water upkeep. Their only upkeep is 2 command points, dirt cheap, and $500 to build, and then their upkeep, to be clear, is only 20 Solari. What that means is that you can really spam them out so long as you have cash in the coffers. I would remind you, we're using village oppression and trade to get rid of everything except for money and intel at this point. Okay? We don't need plastic. We're not building anything new. We don't need influence because we have no votes. We're completely useless. We're just trying to destroy the enemy. So the plan goes a little something like this. Build up your army, however you choose to do it. I've gone with the mercenary spam, thanks to my high command points, cheap units, and not really worrying too much about the rest of my yields or paying taxes or anything like that. I'm pushing for the victory now. Move in, having already nuked the capital, which was nice, but again, I would note, actually not that necessary. Unless they had a huge standing army there, I would actually not recommend, strictly not recommend, that you use your atomics on the enemy capital. Instead, you should opt for this play. Overwhelming military power, supported by a few of those key operations that I mentioned earlier. Maybe you use the nukes to support your strike, but not to directly strike. And I'll mention a little bit more on that in a minute. But before I do, I just quickly want to note that really this strategy plays out as follows. dodge the worms like I'm doing here. God, imagine if I lost 16 mercenaries. Well, a couple of combat drones in there. Do a worm. Disaster. Then sweep in. Use your extra intel and money that you're generating to load up on operations that weaken the enemy base, that increase your supply. And if you've got combat drugs, you might want to have some of those in your back pocket. Cast, like I'm doing here, defensive sabotage. This is the key. If you can get the support of the council to weaken a base, that's useful too. But you're unlikely to be doing that if you're also trying to be nuking. So I'll leave that to one side. But it's important to note that is a powerful way to assist this as well. Sweep in, take them down, and then use your assassinations to take down capitals further away. So if you're using assassinations to take down capitals further away, as House Harkonnen with your early agents unlock, that's easy, then what's the power of the nuke? I argue it's this. Exactly what you're seeing me do here. Strike enemy villages. Arguably, even if you don't want to take them, doesn't really matter. Strike them and cripple them. That is the power of the nuke. You destroy all improvements, but not the militia. It's important to note, the militia, as you can see here, stays, but all of the buildings go. So what have I just done? And what could I do with a couple of key strikes, maybe sped along by sacrificing some agents? I could wipe out an enemy's spice production. Therefore, they're defaulting on their taxes. Their exchange rate is in the toilet. Their influence is in the toilet. By striking their villages and crippling key villages, you've probably also really destroyed water. That village could produce 18. It was producing 20, 34 plastic, influence money, and crucially, that spice. This is the power. You could choose to use it to support an aggressive attack. Take out 1, take out 2 key villages, and then strike a capital. You could use it to defense or deter. Here you can see they're taking my village. I was like, oh, okay, I'll nuke yours instead then. That should level the playing field a fraction. It'll nuke my standing with the council, so sayonara yield, but it is a very powerful and crippling way to basically stop an opponent from progressing. And that is the strength of Dune's Nukes. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.